Please welcome to the stage Jason Mallare, Vice President and General Manager, Mission Solutions, Umbra. Max Reele, Director of Delivery, Rise 8. Erik Daehler, Senior Vice President, Defense, Satellites, Spacecraft Systems, Sierra Space. Lieutenant Colonel J.J. Homan, Deputy Division Chief at Combat Force Enhancement, United States Space Force, and Dr. Kelly Hammett, Director and PEO for Space Rapid Capabilities Office, United States Space Force.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's really a privilege to be here, and truly what an honor to follow the generals. Hopefully you caught General Bythewood and General Gagnon's panel there. That was really fantastic and really teased this up really well. Thank you to my panelists. They'll introduce themselves here in a minute. I think they're fairly well known already. And thank you to Space Force Association for having us. This has really been a great week. The topic we're going to focus on is speed. And we're going to really hit that hard and explore that. We've got a great panel here for that. Quick personal note, I was talking to my kids early this morning, and they say, Dad, you know, what's it like going on stage? I have 6 kids, 4 girls, the oldest 3 are teenage girls. I'm like, what's it like? And I said, well, what it's like is I say whatever I want to say, and people either just sit and smile, or they maybe even nod occasionally. And they don't tell me if they think I'm wrong. They think it quietly, but they still nod anyways. And my daughters are like, no, that's not right. That's not what's going to happen. And they fought back, and they shook their heads. And so, at least for that, I'm very much looking forward to that. We heard over this week, or the last 2 days, about the need for speed. We heard specifically about the threats that we're facing. Hopefully you were at the briefing yesterday. The generals mentioned both the unclassified briefing yesterday. Many of us are privy to classified briefings. The race is real. The race is on. Our peers, our near peers are keeping up, they're catching up, and in some cases they're outpacing us. And that is critical, and it's urgent, and we need to take note of that. Every single one of us in here needs to take note of that, and we need to think about what is our part as we increase our speed of delivery. When we think about what makes our nation beautiful, it's our freedoms, it's the ability to act in a federated way, the ability to act in parallel without necessarily a singular hive mind. We're up against a hive mind. We're up against a singular set of nations that really focus everything in one way. And they do that at the expense of their freedoms, the freedoms that we're working so hard to defend. And so as we think about that, we have to keep having the same conversation. How can we move faster? How can we be more responsive to the threat, more responsive to the need, the direction that our warfighters and our leaders are giving us? And so that's what we're going to talk about today. The metrics that we need to be looking at is everything from how fast are we shipping new products, how fast are we delivering new features, how fast are we launching capabilities, and how fast are we going from prototype to orbit. We've got a great panel today. It's an even mix of industry and government, and so I think we've got really good balanced perspective, and I'm really looking forward to getting into it. So with that, I'll hand it over to Max, let him introduce himself, and we'll go down the line from there.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Max Reele, recently retired from the Air Force. During that time, I got to work on several programs that were advanced technology and really trying to push the needle on the speed to operations. So really pleased to be on this panel now, where we get a chance to address some of the issues that plagued me while I was government. Retired out of Defense Innovation Unit, so even there where we were trying to fuse commercial technology with government capability gaps, specifically for defense. And then after that retirement, after feeling all those plagues during my time in, I was really fortunate enough to join Rise 8, where we're actually maniacal about the speed of delivering capability into operations in a secure way. So it was the perfect fit, and happy to have that discussion here today.
Great, thank you. JJ.
Yeah, thank you. So, Lieutenant Colonel J.J. Homan, for those who've been wondering, I've gotten a lot of messages this morning about Lieutenant Homan speaking. So, I'm out in Colorado right now. I'm at the Combat Forces Command in the S-35F. We're known as the Combat Force Enhancement Division. A little background on me, an operations research analyst in the Air Force. Most of my jobs have been more of the acquisition variety. I did start out in test and evaluation, ended up doing some little ops assessment at the 12th Air Force, taught at the Academy, a lot of background in system engineering, and then actually did a stint at the Air Force Rapid Capabilities Office as a program manager. So I've kind of seen a rather eclectic viewpoint, both in ops and acquisitions. And in my current job, what our focus is delivering rapid, impactful, and sustainable capabilities. So it's been kind of interesting coming from a different, more traditional acquisitions organization like Air Force SpRCO into an operations command and kind of doing similar things a different way. So really focus on software delivery and just prefacing actually, Max's team at Rise 8 is one of our lead developers, is helping us do that. So it's been a great relationship and looking for a discussion today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, JJ. Eric.
Congratulations on all the promotions today. It's a big deal.
Thank you. My family's very proud of me.
Yeah. 5 ranks or 6 in one day?
Let's go with 6.
Let's see. I'm Erik Daehler. I'm the Senior Vice President of Space Defense. I've spent almost my entire career on go-fast programs, the Phantom Works, Skunk Works type mission capabilities that have to get deployed into the theater as fast as possible. I did take a little bit of a stint in a ACAT 1 Class A program with AEHF and got to see the difference in impedance between those various classes of programs. And coming to Sierra Space to stand up an organization designed to move fast, we get to capitalize on something very unique in this time and era that we're in. You know, DIUX is a good example of moving fast, and Unit X is a great example of how impedance mismatch happens when you come up with a new idea. I love that storyline. Right now, the venture capital markets are ready to invest ahead of need to help us accelerate, and companies like Sierra Space and other small, fast-moving startups can capitalize on that to bring something else to the fight, which is capital resources. So excited to talk about this topic.
That's great. We're going to come back to that specifically. Thank you. Dr. Hammett.
Hey, Kelly Hammett. Thanks, Spacepower Association, Space Force, and everybody for having us here. I'm just going to say I'm the director of the Space Rapid Capabilities Office. Been there 3.5 years. I'm a relative newbie at this. I've only been doing it 37 years. So I have a few opinions, and I'll share those today. I like to make these panels a little bit spicy. So, you know, let's make it fun and make it informative and entertaining. I'll just say I'm still here because there's a critical need that has been expressed throughout the conference to mature technologies, get capabilities out, operational capabilities to compete, deter, defeat if necessary, and that's what we're focused on. So let's press with that theme.
That's
Thanks.
great. Yeah, thank you very much for that. So we'll start with Max. We have some specific questions that we're going to start with, and then we're going to go into more of a lightning round, sort of a popcorn set of questions. So Max, we'll start with you. As you think about our need to outpace our near peers, you consider the exponential growth of AI. We realize how complex the fight is becoming. What do you think we should be focusing on, especially as it relates to delivering mission-critical capabilities to the warfighter?
Yeah, that's a really solid question, especially relative to as much as we've been hearing the last day and a half so far about the increasing threat and our ability to keep up with the threats that are coming. Specific to even this timing right now, it's interesting with the NDAA having come out. There's a lot of decomposition out there and a lot of focus on PAE that we've been hearing a lot about and the increased authorities. One of the things that I'm looking forward to, I think our community is all looking forward to, is with that increased responsibility out of the PAEs, they now own much more of the governance that previously you had to go to multiple different organizations for. And with that, we can probably start to fuse speed of delivery, where we focus on, specifically in the software world, continuous delivery. No matter what we're doing, we must be delivering software as fast as possible with tight iterations. Continuous delivery is almost like a technical artifact, but it needs to be married with continuous governance for you to actually be able to overcome the bureaucratic hurdles that get you through the test community, get you through the compliance community, and even funding, to be quite honest, to be able to deliver as fast as you need to. So now with the PAE authorities, I think we'll start to see some really forward-leaning and focused PAEs taking that new responsibility to heart and allowing continuous governance to freely flow. Additionally, you can see in the NDAA that there's some big focuses on what happens with small business and what happens with fusing commercial into military capacity. But there's even calling into law the fact that we need to do automated testing on all of the software that comes out on the systems that are fielded for defense. And so Congress is literally putting into law the speed of need and the speed that we need to be able to incorporate new tools like Gen AI, as the question prompt suggests. So I'm really looking forward to how Congress's focus can trickle into the department, and then how the department's focus can trickle into the PAEs, and how the PAEs can actually be like unleashed to really exercise full authority across their new responsibility domain to push us towards continuous governance, to marry up with our continuous delivery models.
Awesome, thank you. And JJ, I'm going to turn over to you, kind of following on that. The CFE division has had success implementing an agile approach as laid out in the software acquisition pathway framework. What was the cost of that evolution, and what were the benefits?
Yeah, so it's been interesting. When I arrived about 3 years ago to what was then the Innovation Directorate under Space Force Operations Command, since some of the org changes, I showed up there, and it was a little bit perplexing as to, like, our office was focused on, the innovation arena, which I think there's been, generally just a challenge with what that is. As things have evolved, I think we've seen a lot of progress in the software arena, and that's where our office has kind of found the sweet spot of, like, hey, what can we do to get after delivering capabilities? So our focus is software and delivering digital capabilities. As the software acquisition pathways kind of came to light, and it's like, hey, a new way of doing business, we realized that a lot of the things that we had already been doing with getting away from like pre-canned solutions, pre-prescribed requirements documents that are often outdated. And we really started to focus on what is it the operators in the field, because we are the ops command, we are, they're part of our command. We have the ability to go out and have those conversations, say like, hey, what do you guys really need? So we really kind of adopt some things in there, like capable needs statements. We tailored them for our needs. But I think the main benefits that we saw was, it wasn't coming from a traditional acquisition world. There was always a real challenge between, like, hey, are we delivering the right thing? Like, yes, we have this document from the past, a CDD, an ICD that describes like what is supposed to happen. What we often see, just frankly, is that those systems maybe lack some of the basics of what needs to be done. So it allowed us to not, I think, like, worry about that as much, with having direct conversations with our operators. They're like, hey, as we build this together, you're informing the design. When we get to the point of like, yes, now we're pushing this to prod. And I think that's the other thing that I want to leave on this conversation, is that the greatest benefit, I think, what we've been able to do with our approach is almost day one, we're already pushing things to prod. So where the operators can touch it. So it's not like a pitch it over the fence kind of delivery approach, which I've had to do in the past. So it's been enlightening, this kind of approach. But I think it's really kind of changed the game as far as like, how do we get stuff out to the operators? We have examples of that, not just theoreticals.
So how do you think about that relative to risk posture? How do you kind of maintain that speed, but thoughtful about the risk tolerance, the risks you're willing to take, that are coherent with the mission needs, coherent with your overall requirements, but without jeopardizing speed? How do you balance those?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an art, maybe a science too. It's a challenge because those risks, right? I think when we talk about risks, we're often we make them a little bit broad. I want to kind of hone in on the delivery risk, and not just the delivery, but more the fielding of any capability. I think we balance our approach with, like I said before, we have such a tight integration with our users. Like, we go out to the field, we kind of pulse them for like, hey, where are your problems? Where are those gaps and seams, often areas that, frankly, other systems just can't get after? A lot of cross-mission area things. So most of the things we've been working on are like, connections between like SDA units working with missile warning units. Oftentimes, program offices having come from one, don't have like a direct requirement to meet that kind of integration gap. So we're able to kind of get after that in a way where we're talking to our operators, getting that feedback. And yes, there's always gonna be risks that like what we deliver to be like, no, that doesn't work for us. But by having like almost like daily conversations, getting feedback along the way, and like I said, building it together where they can touch it, they can feel it, they can use it, that's real test. That's operational test at the heart of it. Having come from an OT world where we were preparing to do the big test for big weapon systems, I love this approach because we're mitigating that risk like on the daily. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. We'll keep moving down the line here, Erik. We'll move to you now. Thinking more about the topic here, prototypes to orbit. We're familiar with systems that have taken decades to go from napkin to orbit. We also know that we can now field systems in weeks or months. When it comes to speed to orbit for space-based systems, what's the best practices you've seen, and what are some of the worst?
Yeah, the juxtaposition of the best and the worst is easy. There's a great example that's going on real time right now, program Resilient GPS. The warfighters have a gap and have a problem. We know that GPS is being addressed every single day by the Russians. The Chinese are finding ways to mitigate that strength and force enabler that we have, that we require for all of our systems. And if we don't respond to that threat with a capability, we are going to be disadvantaged in the fight. So the Resilient GPS program came out with requirements to move fast, with funding, with authority, with acquisition speed, and in 7 months for $7 million, we had real hardware providing Y, M, and course acquisition code to the real hardware, demonstrating the end-to-end performance, getting ready for an integration job, not a technology development job, but an integration job to put capability on orbit. And then through the hand-wringing of Congress and the angst of acquisition, and everybody stuck in the pickle between whether or not it was okay to move fast or whether the requirements were met, or if I have the requirements, you end up with a program that today doesn't have a future fate. And so taking that example, how do you have both the amazing side of moving fast with a customer that knows how to acquire quickly and thinking differently, and then the system with the bureaucratic grease filled with sand, grinding to a halt, keeping that capability from coming on orbit. So I think in one program, you just have that perfect embodiment of that challenge.
That's excellent. Thank you. That's a really good example, and we'll circle back to that. Dr. Hammett, we'll move on to you next. I think we're all probably familiar with generally your portfolio, Space Rapid Capabilities Office. It's a sensitive portfolio, and given that sensitivity, you and your team work hard to carefully vet who you bring under the tent, carefully balancing security with speed. As an acquisition expert, what do you look for in your industry partners? What are red flags and what are shining stars?
Okay, that's a loaded question, but I'll just say, and I've said many times, we look for A-team players to partner with us, to be innovative, to really discuss transparently the needs that we're trying to meet, the program requirements, and I am an original classification authority, so I am able to adapt security guidance to the specific requirements of a program or what we're trying to do. I will say in this forum that over the past year, we've actually made a little bit of progress in SAP Enterprise Reform, downgrading some things, getting things more openly discussable with allies and partners, and that's been an emphasis of the administration and the Secretary of War. What I do not want, and you said shining examples and negative examples, what I do not want is lack of transparency and false promises about what you can actually deliver as an industry partner. And even as a government team, right, we have to have a clear-eyed look at the challenges, the threats, the things we're trying to accomplish, working with our operational partners about capabilities that we're trying to deliver. And where we have that, we have had success. Where we have had failure to deliver on promises, we have had failure, and we just can't do that. We're in a position where we need to work together with speed and transparency on the capabilities. And I'll just say, an ACT strategy, as Erik was just alluding to, where min viable products are deliverable, and then you iterate and you keep bringing as you keep working on things. But we've got to get stuff out there, and we've got to be just clear-eyed working together on how to do that.
That's fantastic, fantastic. And I'll commend you on the efforts to I'll say, right-size the classification. I spend most of my time in this remote sensing radar world, and I think we've done ourselves a disservice as a country. I think we've had too classified for too long, and it's really slowed us down. And so I think being very proactive and thoughtful about bringing things into the open when we can, whether it be technology or threats, knowledge of the threat, so we can share that knowledge broadly and move fast, I think is critical. Another question for you, Dr. Hammett. When you think about mission class, so maybe traditional aerospace classing, Class A versus do no harm type classes, and risk tolerance, how does SpRCO tailor and balance risk postures to maximize the speed, risk, and capability equation?
Yeah, so absolutely tailorable. And I'll say one of the things I've done in the 3.5 years I've been there is actually published an operating instruction to my workforce on mission assurance and how you tailor this. So giving them the references, like I'll use the analogy of DoD 5000. Here is the 2,000 page standard. Don't do that. Walk that back and do what you need for the min viable product of the thing we're trying to achieve at speed. Now, it can't be all the way back to zero, where you have no mission assurance. You have to survive launch. You have to be able to operate. What I say in many cases is when you press the red button, it turns on. When you don't press the red button, it doesn't turn on. But that takes an experienced, educated, and trained workforce to make those judgment calls, and that's one of the things we've tried to do. That will be one of the challenges, actually, as we implement acquisition reform at scale, right? How do you have the experienced acquisition workforce to make these calls on tailoring mission assurance, system safety, all these things to get something out quickly? You have to know what you're doing, quite frankly. And if you screw it up, it can be catastrophic. So.
Do you mind if I share an experience that we shared together as a team?
Please, and then I think Max has a comment also.
So Dr. Hammett's team and my team got the opportunity to go through shoulder-to-shoulder negotiations on something, a 2-week sprint. The goal was get to the fastest capability that met the mission assurance requirements in a Class CD type mission space, right? Sounds like every fast acquisition we've been on. And we went through line by line and said, this spec compliance document is going to drive this in the schedule. Is that what we're looking for as a team? No. We have the standard command media that does the exact same thing from a mission assurance perspective. Can we turn that into the compliance document rather than us rewrite and recreate from whole cloth or from a traditional mill standard? Let's use this. And we went back and forth over a 2-week period. We're able to negotiate, get on contract, and start sprinting. And now, 2 years later, hardware showing up in factory that meets the mission needs. That's a perfect example of that contractor impedance mismatch that you need to create with the contracting team on the opposing side.
Fantastic. Max?
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Hammett, I applaud you for how you kind of categorized your red flags and green flags for fast-paced companies that you're working with. I think you're the type of probably PAE, as we make the transition, that small businesses are looking for. On the inverse of that, I would say as fast-moving small businesses, we're looking for the right government customers to get in to a relationship with. And specifically, there's this measure of mission assurance and the risk tolerance we can take, and you guys are talking about on-orbit assets, which is a very different calculation that has to go into play rather than the speed with which we can be delivering software into systems that already exist in place. And so when we're looking at it, we're looking for who are these acquisition leaders that are going to be bold enough to hold the institutional incumbents accountable for the delivery timelines that they've been made to go on contract for. Because the real regret there is when you haven't held the institutional incumbent accountable for an overrun, you're stealing the coffers of tomorrow that you were going to use for true R&D and to really meet the vision of modernization that you had on your programs. So look forward to you and your counterparts kind of demonstrating that for us so that we can all fall into line and really get in line with your vision.
So I'll just say I'm your huckleberry. I've raised this topic very specifically with the DoD CIO, Katie Arrington, and the Space Force S6 about software and networks and IT and IA, and we're going to come after it really hard.
Fantastic. Great discussion, guys. Thank you very much. So we're going to go into a bit of a popcorn here. So I'm going to kind of pose a question, a comment, and ask the panel just to jump in as they see fit. We heard the generals talk previously about the awesome work of the OTTI team. He implored us to take out our pens and write down digital models, digital twins, blue models. So I did that. I wrote it down. We all need to be thinking about that. And certainly we come from a past, we kind of the broader space community of simulate, analyze, document, simulate, for decades and decades, and then launch. We're in an era now where we've seen launch go from $30,000 a kilogram to thousands of dollars a kilogram to hundreds, and I think the U.S. is going to get to tens of dollars per kilogram in our lifetimes. And so getting to space has truly never been easier because of the launch as the biggest roadblock to that, but also the availability of commercial comm services, commercial operations, commercial software services, et cetera. So panelists, as we think about the need to continue to build models to, I think the generals put it, you have to have those models and you have to kind of do the analytics so you don't show your hand, but also the benefits and the ability we have to launch rapidly. How do you guys think about that, and how do we balance those two things?
I'll start. The beginning of my career, 10 launches a year was a big year. Those 10 launches were manifested 5 years before. And that's not an exaggeration. It literally was a wait for the vehicle to show up. And if you weren't ready at the time that the vehicle showed up with 100% mission success ready at the time, you didn't make it. Now you can launch on Thursday. And if you miss Thursday, Tuesday next week is going up as well. And yes, there's a manifest challenge, but it is as easy as getting on an aircraft and flying across the country. And so...
Is that easy?
Well, not quite.
Getting there.
Okay, a little bit simplified. But when you think about it in that respect, now you can do quicker development, do more integration, and take a little bit more risk as you lead up to that launch posture, knowing that if I keep a hot production system in a factory flowing, and that factory can continue to produce, the factory can meet the speed of the launch, can meet the speed of the mission, and you can evolve from mission 1 to mission 2 to mission 3 with software upgrades or replace a piece of hardware that didn't work perfectly. I think that's where we are today. 150 launches this year as a nation. That means you do get the opportunity to jump in with new capabilities about as quickly as possible.
150 launches, many of those launches having hundreds of missions on them. So yeah, absolutely. Dr. Hammett, I'd love to hear your thought on this. I mean, the idea of tipping our hand, right? Putting things out there and tipping our hand is something I think you probably lose sleep over on a regular basis. How do you think of that?
Yeah, I guess I'll say a couple of things here. One is the United States believes that we have immunity to do certain things on orbit over the CONUS that are not observed. That is a false assertion. Commercial assets can see pretty much everything that's going on in orbit, and we have to acknowledge that. So we have to be very intentional about what we launch, what we show, when we test. This is a hindrance. You asked about security, earlier. We have to be, again, clear-eyed about reveal, conceal, and how we want to manage that posture. I don't think we're doing a great job of that right now, to be honest, but I think it's going to require additional consideration and a policy that allows us to have delegated authorities to manage those things, because right now, again, these things are held at the highest levels, and it's slowing us down, and we can't have that either if we want to, as I said earlier, compete, deter, defeat if necessary. We have to be able to do things and take advantage of the launch cadence that we have, the ability to deploy and test and train and do these things, as we've heard for the last couple days.
Yeah, that's fantastic. We heard a similar model from the generals previously, moving from protect and defend to protect, defend, and attack if necessary. So any other thoughts on that? Go ahead, JJ.
Yeah, so you can take us again from more of like a software angle. So that's what our office is kind of gravitated towards. So the idea of models, right? You know, I think there's the models that we think of like in mind simulation and, you know, like large efforts that we do, right? Our approach is definitely more like we're constantly modeling. Like that's the whole concept of like, I think, you know, with software delivery, you know, putting pen to paper, then getting ideas down, you know, out of your head to when folks start actually, you know, making interfaces, the code behind it. I really think making software is easy. Making good software is really, really hard, right? And so I think this idea of like using models more and getting that into our like our daily practices of like, hey, as we're delivering, right, we are modeling all along the way, and we're constantly getting the feedback from real users. That's the benefit of like with software. Now it's getting like different than like, you know, putting satellites in orbit. It's not the same, but I think the ideas and practices of let's get whatever feedback we can get that's tangible. It shouldn't matter if it's hardware or software. And so promoting that, I get it. It's a little bit maybe easier in the software game, but there's still a lot of similarities regarding that.
Awesome, thank you. Let's move on here, thinking a little bit more about the industrial base and sort of how we leverage that. You know, we've seen a new generation of companies in space, or in the DIB, but space specifically. They offer to go quick by using OPM, other people's money, private equity, venture capital, institutional financing, finding ways to very, very quickly raise capital. You know, we see companies, and we experience this at Umbra as well. You know, the ability to raise hundreds of millions of dollars can sometimes be a matter of weeks or months, and you can put that capital to work very quickly. And so we've seen that model. We've seen that model work. I got a comment from a customer recently that used the term "skin in the game," and what they were saying is, you know, we've come from this kind of history of contractors forming with this idea of like, hey, we're going to sit around, we're going to bring engineers together, and we're really just going to be standing by waiting for you to prescribe what you want us to do, and then, you know, we'll take the contract and we'll go start developing. And versus the model of, no, we're going to go raise this money, we're going to invest the money, kind of at risk, industry, to go fast and also retire that risk and to kind of get ahead of that acquisition cycle, to help the acquisition cycle. And then actually demonstrate skin in the game. And that skin in the game can look, like I said, more like these new space companies, but it can also look like more traditional companies doing demos speculatively. A software demo, a hardware demo, putting something in orbit, doing it via an IRAD project or maybe a cooperative research and development agreement. So curious your thoughts on that panel. How do we look at that? How do we want to incentivize that? Are there any bad behaviors in there that we're seeing? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I'll quickly get started. Just a really quick comment here. There's a lot of companies that aren't looking necessarily for OPM from other people's money, from VCs or from private equity, but they are reliant on the SBIR program, and they are reliant on funding sources to really kind of hit this flywheel effect of being able to have the capital to put out quick prototyping efforts and get things into operations. And then, and then in the current NDAA, the SBIR program is actually is not represented anymore. So this puts the, well, we'll see what happens in the approps bill, but this puts the onus on the services to really push their acquisition leaders to look at this and say, how are you going to bring in new entrants, right? How are we going to bring in new entrants with a path to transition to operations so that we can avoid this kind of elephant in the room, which is the valley of death. And it's going to be interesting to see if that holds true through the approps bill, how the services handle that and decide to go after small businesses on their own to try and achieve this speed of innovation without private equity and VCs or the SBIR program.
Well said. It's daunting. It's daunting. We're all watching it. Good.
There's a really interesting story over the last 50 years of space. You work at any of the big legacy organizations, you can see legacy infrastructure and capitalization that people can say, that's from the Apollo program, that's from program A, that's from program D. And buildings were literally built by the government to capitalize that infrastructure. That's not the optimal way to build a factory. When you can reach out to the markets and you can say, we know that people will demand power systems and solar arrays for every single satellite that goes into orbit, let's go build a factory designed to make solar arrays as fast as possible, you can design a totally different production system and drive down the cost and take that monetization and that capitalization and convert it into speed. When you build in the legacy building that was designed for the Apollo Surveyor missions and try to build in that same infrastructure that is 60 years old now, you get a very different product and a very different cost. So I think what we're going to see out of this investment world is now speed showing up with manufacturing techniques, with production techniques that match other industries like automotive and electronics manufacturing. So that's the advantage I see right now.
Fantastic, thank you. Good.
Hey, so a big emphasis from the Secretary of War and the DepSec War on capital investment to speed capability delivery. But that requires a demand signal, from the government if we're going to go, not rely on institutional or commercial, buying practices. We have to be clear, transparent, back to transparency about what we're after, and are we going to bring money, right, for the private companies to develop these capabilities, to invest in CapEx, and so again, some themes of continuity of leadership. You have to be in a place to guarantee these things are going to come, and that is really important. And building the trust between the government and the private parties, and then where that's not happening, just leveraging what's happening in venture capital and commercial markets, being a smart buyer, right? To say, okay, the government maybe is not going to be an equity stakeholder here, but we're going to leverage what you're doing in the commercial world. And we just have to be way better at this because it requires capital investment. A number of our successful efforts in rapid capability of delivery have been because the companies have gone out into the supply chain and made capital investments, either to infrastructure or parts to get ahead of the curve.
That's great, and I'll, on the flip side of that, as a new space company, we see this. The part that we have to play in the new space industry, though, is we have to be very honest about what we actually are offering, what we're actually delivering. We need to prove it if we can. And I think, a lot of this logjam, Dr. Hammett, you mentioned, we're not doing it great, this whole kind of commercial mindset, is because there is friction. And that friction, I think a lot of it comes from these companies. They raise a lot of money, and so they kind of have this cachet, and they parlay it maybe using jargon and phraseology to sort of, hey, this thing is the next big thing. It's better than anything you've ever had. It slices and it dices. And in many cases, it ends up really not being true because you do have a different industry, right? The private equity industry, the venture capital industry now kind of stepping in. It's our jobs as space professionals in the middle there to be very good stewards of that and to make sure that we're being very honest about what we can do, what we can't do. And because what happens is then the trust is eroded and then we slow down. And so we have to be very careful about that. Yeah, go ahead, please, JJ.
Yeah, I just want to add something from some experiences that we had when I first showed up to what was then the innovation directorate. Because we had the word innovation in it, everyone assumed that anything innovation should come to our office. So we often became kind of the focal point for a lot of SPIR projects. And what we found is that a lot of industry was coming to us saying like, hey, can you sponsor us? Can you help us get into phase 1, phase 2? And we were actually, we were excited about like, hey, yeah, we want to help you guys get into this game. But what we found after about 2 years of doing this is that every good idea was just dying. After the prototypes were delivered, the ops community didn't have like a way to keep them going. So one thing, from like a change point of view, I think what the rest of the panelists are kind of alluding to is like having systems to where there aren't all these valleys of death per se, that we talk about these things. One idea could be, it's like, hey, let's promote more actionable prototypes, things that are already scalable, like something that's driven from an ops need that already has a path to production that could be scaled. Versus what I've seen, frankly, is a lot of like, here's some cool tech, let's figure out what we could do with it, right? And that's kind of a reverse way of doing business versus being driven by like, hey, here's the operational needs of the ops community, which from the operations community I think we can help with, but then having the acquisition community with more of the dollars to make sure, yeah, let's scale these into real production environments, not just hypotheticals or prototypes that we have to try to figure out how do we get it to the actual operators.
Awesome. Thank you, JJ. We're just about out of time here, so we're going to do a quick lightning round. So I'd actually like us to address the service members real quickly, if you kind of give them one charge, especially the young service members and industry colleagues, as we think out the next decade, few decades, as we sort of maybe hand off the baton in some ways. What charge would you give them relative to speed, relative to the risk, relative to what we're facing? We'll just go down the line.
Sure, yeah. When I was a young service member, I remember my security manager told me security is inherently inconvenient. And I think that maybe that was true 20 years ago, but right now, companies like us at Rise 8 and many others that are represented here, we're trying to change the calculus on that, where you can deliver high-quality software at speed, and you no longer have to make a trade-off between the two because you're doing so with things like the continuous ATO and ensuring continuous monitoring against it. So we can deliver at speed and securely. And so break that mantra. Don't let your bosses tell you that security is a trade-off with speed.
JJ?
Yeah, real quick. So I'm still a young lieutenant, so I'm still learning.
I forgot. Sorry.
No, I would say just stay with it. You know, I know it can get frustrating, and when you do get frustrated, you know, talk to your leadership, talk to the colleagues around you. That's helped me get through all the bureaucracy, all the things will get you if you're just keeping to yourself. So just let's have those conversations. I think we're all trying to get to the same place.
Erik?
I reflect on the service that we are all providing to the nation and as a team. This is a very small industry in a very small mission space. While the enlisted and officer class of the Space Force Guardians is small, the entire community around us, whether you're in the force, support the force as a contractor, or retired and going into that transition phase, we are all the reservists that are going to fight tonight. And so, you know, keep those connections tight. This is a really important part of our mission space, and this community here is what's going to make us successful in the future.
Awesome. Dr. Hammett, bring us home.
Well, I think we're out of time, but I'll just say again, speed and urgency of delivering capabilities to deter and compete and defeat are essential. So if security is a hurdle, if manpower is a hurdle, if this administration, this department is ready to take those challenges on, identify things that are slowing you down. I've been in with the DepSec war, and that was the number one thing he said. What's making you slow?
Wow.
What is in your way? Help me eliminate those hurdles, and we'll do it. So there's hope.
That's awesome. That's a great way to end. Awesome panel. Please help me thank them for this great panel. And thank you. Have a great day.